Welcome in, everybody. I am thrilled to bring a special draft piece here with a very special guest, Mike Renner, the lead draft analyst at Pro Football Focus. How's it going, Mike? Thanks for taking some time out of the busy scouting work and time to talk some ball.
Doing great. Great talking to fellow Packers fans always.
Hell yeah, man. And let's just get right into it. I wanted to start the conversation with some Packers talk, and we don't need to go too far because hopefully works out to have you on for the Packers deep dive again, and we can really get into it there. But a lot of headlines and talk about the Packers, obviously, right now with the Aaron Rodgers. It's not even news at this point. It's just we're just waiting. So
that's in the news.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it. I haven't heard anything about this. What are we talking about?
You must have canceled your cable subscription.
Dude, it's insane how everywhere. It's gonna happen. We don't need an update on how close they are every day. You know?
Right. I know. I'm just so tired of it. But I do want to talk with that said, I do want to talk a little bit about like the trade value. And just kind of like, what do you think they end up agreeing upon for Rodgers?
The trade value is how desperate the Jets are. And right now, they're playing like they're the most desperate people in the world, right? They're not doing themselves any favors at the negotiating table with what they've said publicly, with basically the corner they've backed themselves into. So they may not get pick 13. I think that's the big sticking point right now. And I don't blame them for pushing for pick 13, but I think they'll get pick 13 equivalent. I think the Jets want to stand firm for pick 13 because they want to tackle, right? They want
Agreed.
That right tackle. Hopefully Mekhi Becton comes back healthy on the left side, big if, obviously. But even if he doesn't, you still need a second tackle. So I think they want to tackle at 13. They'll probably get a good one. They're in prime position to take one. And then they'll be fine giving up, a second this year, maybe a second next year, and maybe like conditional picks future down the line because I think the Jets also don't want a one-year rental, right? They don't want to give up all this draft capital with a great roster that really is just a quarterback away, only for him to walk after this season, which is very, I don't want to say likely to happen, but like it's a big possibility. You have trying to predict what Aaron Rodgers is going to do is a difficult thing, as we've seen in the past few years. So I do think in time they'll get a good haul. Like I said, probably on par with like a mid to high first round pick in terms of a draft value chart. I just doubt it ends up being an actual first rounder.
Yeah. Yeah. One guy that I just would be very curious is Jermaine Johnson. And if I would just love to know if that's someone that Gutekunst is pushing for, because I definitely saw him as someone that they would have had their eyes on last year when they chose to take Mr. Walker instead. But like if, I wonder if that could be a consolation for like, okay, you're not giving us 13. We want Jermaine Johnson. I wonder if that could be what they're fighting about. I know Connor Rogers chimed in when I tweeted that and said that they wouldn't do that, but it seems to make sense to me.
If there is like one guy that, if you're from the Packers perspective, that you would want from that roster, that's feasible, that the Jets would be willing to
reasonably give up.
Yeah. Obviously, that's it. Like, it wasn't even a starter last year. I don't think doesn't even profile to be their starter this year, barring some massive leap from him in year two. So, like, if you're the Jets, it's maybe not the biggest deal. You have, you have guys like Bryce Huff, even, who's a backup there, who's pretty damn good. You had Michael Clemens, who looked pretty darn good as a rookie. Like, it's a loaded defensive line group there in New York. They could lose one guy and barely even feel it. So, I do think the Packers obviously have the need there. Their depth on edge when Rashawn Gary went down was pretty well exposed, even though I love Kingsley and Egbury.
Mm-hmm.
But this is still like, you want to have a plethora of defensive linemen that are talented. You can't just have a starting four like they did last year. We saw how that worked out.
Yeah. So I wanted to shift it more to the Packers projection with Jordan Love and kind of, I know like you weren't big on Love coming out. I was. It's a lot is, I don't know if it's changed, but a lot has transpired since. I'm just curious, like, are you any more optimistic heading into next year than maybe you would have been a couple of years ago? Or are you still just like, man, this could be a complete disaster?
I am. And truthfully, like, hats off to whoever made the decisions here in terms of how they've developed Jordan Love to date. Like I think they've done a great job. He has looked different pretty much every single time he stepped on a football field, right? Going back to the Chiefs game in year two, thought that was rocky. Preseason looked a lot better. And then, what he showed against the Eagles was like, oh, this might be a quarterback. So really see the upward progression. Obviously was a toolsy sort of guy coming out. And I think the comfort aspect is there with him now. I didn't like him coming out because obviously it wasn't the guy I felt good about starting right away. The Packers didn't either. Didn't even, put the pressure on him to have to be the backup year one. And I really worried about if he was ever going to make the necessary strides to get there. But I love things like his arm talent. I love things like his pocket presence and sort of his sack avoidance that he showed on tape that not everyone has. So there is a lot to like, and he was drafted in the first round because he does have like the high end sort of potential in him that obviously, you're the Packers. That's what you're chasing, going from Aaron Rodgers to whoever it is. You want to shoot for that high end. But I do think that he's obviously not going to be like Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers really wasn't Rodgers last year. He was kind of set in
Yeah.
his ways, not really playing the game we saw from him when he had one of his favorites in Devontae Adams.
Yeah. I'm the biggest thing I'm looking for is like the Christian Watson play comes to mind where it's play action, head gets around, and then boom, 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 right on time. Felt like that was an aspect of Rodgers' play that he got like better at in time with LaFleur's offense, but I felt like it took a step back once Devontae left. And I'm just very curious, like if the trust in the system actually elevates the offense in certain ways that Rodgers wasn't. So that's like the biggest thing I'm looking for with Love is just playing by the book instead of trying to be Rodgers.
And he did, right? That was almost to a fault on his tape at Utah State. Was like he would ball's supposed to go here. I'm throwing it here, and like threw a lot of picks because of it his last year there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think he is a guy who's going to trust the offense a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. The only other Packers question is like who are kind of one or two guys that you would just be gushing if they took at 15?
The two guys that I just like want, they are missing. They have been missing ever since they traded away Devontae Adams, and just need are obviously I've been banging the table for pass catchers for a while. I think it's even a bigger like necessity now with Jordan Love that you can't just expect him to make magic with not a lot of talent around him. But Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, the wide receiver, obviously, or Dalton Kincaid, the Utah tight end. I look at Watson and Dobbs, their skill sets, they're outside wide receivers. They have some vertical speed. That's the role you're playing them in. They have no one who, on third down, you trust to win one-on-one and catch the ball. The big and catch the ball there with Watson and Dobbs, the hands they showed as rookies. So those two guys are them. Jack Smith and Jigba from the slot is going to win against press man coverage. He just is. Dalton Kincaid from slot, tight, whatever. If he has a linebacker or safety on him, he's going to win against those guys. And he's going to haul it in. He's got exceptional ball skills. So that's what I think is missing. That's what was missing last year. You saw teams just completely unafraid to play press man against them all year long. Pretty common theme. And then that's when Rodgers wasn't going to trust anyone. You had to see it to throw it. And that's a downfall of any offense. So I think to foolproof that, you give a guy that you don't need to see it throw it. You have a guy that you can trust to be where he's supposed to be. And to me, that's those two guys.
Yeah. For me, another guy I want to throw in there is Quentin Johnston. I totally agree with the middle of the field is what they need help. Cobb's going to be gone. They let Rodgers go. Like they have no tight ends. Amari Rodgers. They have no tight ends left on the roster other than Josiah DeGuara. So I totally agree. But just thinking of LaFleur wanting to be kind of that Shanahan style offense with just the crossing routes and the run after catch ability, he's a lot more similar to Debo than I think a lot of people realize, and just the way he can kind of blaze over the middle and make guys miss. He does it in different ways than Debo does maybe, but just as far as how he would fit the offense with him and Watson, I just think just the raw concept, the play action shot play where one guy's running a post, one guy's running a crosser. I don't know how you defend those two guys. So I would love that fit. The other guy is another tight end, Darnell Washington, just kind of being that run block fit up front and kind of the just much better version of what Martellus Bennett has been for them. And we know Gutekunst loves Georgia, young, athletes, like he has a very specific type. Like that's a guy that I wouldn't necessarily love at 15, but I can realistically see them taking him and being like, yeah, okay, this could be fun.
I love that you mentioned Quentin Johnson there because I do think he's someone they would also be high on. Like that's kind of where, um, to me, you mentioned Debo Samuel. The comp that I've seen of like receivers in the NFL right now that I think is probably the most accurate or just like skill set wise that I see the most is actually Brandon Ayuk from San Francisco. Just because they're one cut runners, on one cut routes, they are dead. Like their suddenness out of their breaks is huge. And Ayuk, for not being tall, massive wingspan. I think he had like an 80-inch wingspan coming out. That's Quinn Johnson too. Checked in a lot shorter than people like maybe thought based off his tape, but it's because he has 33 and 5/8 inch arms because he has like a 6'10" wingspan. So they're one cut route runners with big catch radius who can run after the catch. I think that'd be someone that the Packers would want. And I'll save my thoughts on Darnell Washington though for a little later here.
All right, sounds good.
He
Yeah,
fits
so
one of the categories in the future here, fortunately.
Yeah, so let's transition to the next point here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks, and I just wanted to kind of give the floor to you and just kind of maybe just rank your top four, and if you have any strong opinions one way or the other on the top four guys.
I have one strong opinion and then a bunch of weak opinions after that, sadly. But my one strong opinion is that Bryce Young is going to be a whatever the top tier of quarterbacks is behind Mahomes kind of quarterback. That like I think I watch his tape and I'm in awe of how quickly he processes information. Um, and sort of the plays outside the pocket, creating in that realm is not something guys like to learn, in my opinion. That is you have that vision or you don't. It's like you don't just play point guard like Chris Paul after being average at it in college. Like Chris Paul was Chris Paul at Wake Forest. Like you have to have that sort of ability to see the game to play the quarterback position that way. And Bryce Young has it, man. And so I think he's special. I think he's no brainer quarterback one in this draft class. That the only thing that worries me is injuries, not necessarily even like how his size affects him on a football field playing wise. So Bryce Young's one. After that, it's a debate. Truthfully, like who I would draft after that between Stroud, Richardson, Levis is 100% just dictated on my offense coordinator and the talent I can put around him. If I have a vertical passing attack that, I not really want to use my quarterback as a runner, more of a traditional, just kind of like a traditional West Coast, CJ Stroud. That's your guy in this
Mm-hmm.
draft class. I think he's very much going to be a good quarterback in that mold. Do I see super high end? Sometimes I see flashes. It wasn't consistent though, as of yet. If I'm running a lot of like play action, move quarterback, and then shot plays down the football field, I want Will Levis in this draft class. I think he's great on the move. I think his pocket presence and ability to play under pressure is as good as it gets in this draft class. Now, he takes some bad sacks, but that's also because he's getting pressure from everywhere in that Kentucky offensive line. And if I have a coordinator who wants to get the quarterback involved in the run game, like if that's something I know and trust my OC to do well at a high level, whether it's Shane Steichen with the Colts, whether it's, Greg Roman obviously was the GOAT at that for years and years and years. If I have someone like that, it's difficult to go anywhere other than Anthony Richardson, just because
Yeah.
if you get creative with him as a runner, you will have a top 5 rushing attack in the NFL pretty much every season he's healthy. Everyone. It's just, that's how the nature of the beast works when you have a guy that special. So I guess those are my weak opinions, that it really depends on the team after Bryce Young.
Yeah. I'm just like holding back a big smile because I'm surprised. I don't think I've ever had a conversation about a quarterback class where it's like just mirroring my thoughts on guys. Because I totally agree about Bryce Young. He's tier 1. Then those other 3 guys are tier 2. And like I see everyone saying the Panthers are trading up for Stroud, and I'm like, why would you give up that much for like? I like Stroud. I like Stroud more than I thought I would. But if you're giving up that much, you got to take Bryce Young. You just have to. And so I totally agree there. And then sounds like you're kind of like me, where I think the Levis hate has gone a little bit too far. Like his surrounding situation was complete dog shit, and like it's almost impossible to get through his tape sometimes. The only thing I disagree slightly would be what you said about the pocket presence. I think he stands tall in the pocket, and that he does better than anybody. But I think he doesn't like sense he doesn't get out of trouble as well as some like a Bryce Young, obviously, but even like Anthony Richardson. But pocket presence, it's everyone has a different interpretation
That
of
yeah,
what
pocket
that
presence
means.
is too big of a catch-all to just say. I do agree. He's unfazed by pressure is more what I was meaning, more
Yeah,
so than anyone in this class. I think obviously Bryce Young is the best mover in the pocket in terms of like finding space and then being able to make plays there.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I agree about landing spot's going to matter beyond that. Different teams make different sense for different quarterbacks. Oh, and then I would be curious, do your thoughts on Hendon Hooker follow with mine, where like any thought of him going in the first round is absolutely insane?
Insane, like truly. I I get that it's a quarterback position. It's premium. If you fall in love with the guy's tape, you fall in love with the guy's tape, and that people knocking Joe Burrow for being 24 when he came out. Kenny Pickett last year. It's like when you figure it out, you figure it out. So I don't think
Hmm.
that's massive. The age thing, but it is that he's that old and is going to have to completely kind of relearn how to play quarterback based off of what he did at Tennessee versus what he's going to
Yeah,
be asked to do in the NFL. Coming off an ACL that you have no clue how it's going to affect his athleticism, which is a big selling point of his game. Um, all those things put together, it's like, do I have to use a first rounder on this guy? Like,
right.
maybe you won't get a guy who's tape you like that much if you're a very good team consistently who maybe has an aging quarterback. I'm trying to even think who would fall into that mold at the moment. But like if you really are looking 3 years down the line, like a Jordan Love pick, like if you're really looking for a Jordan Love type of pick back in the first round, okay. Just because I don't think there's probably 32 guys or 31 guys in this draft class I would love to draft in the first round. But even that is like, that's crazy to me. Still a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Love was 21, it's like
Yes. Yes. Like
that
that's
age
development
thing when
potential.
you're
Like,
I agree, like, he down the road could turn into a good starter, but it's just, man, he's gonna be 28, 29 by that point. It's just, man, I cannot believe even first round alone, let alone Tannenbaum putting him 5th. It's just like, what are we doing here?
mocking or mocking mock drafts is what we're doing. So it's
Mm,
mocking the
mm,
exercise together, all together.
I gotcha. I like it. Any thoughts on, McKee?
Oh, dude, I love Tanner McKee. He was going to be one of my guys a little later. I think I think he has a high. I think he's translatable to the NFL. Like I think he will be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, how good he'll be, like what can he reach? How high can he push his ceiling? Very debatable, and it's nowhere close to like any of the top guys, right?
Right.
And that's your difference in the hype that he's getting, and even compared to Hooker, it's like weaker arm, less mobile. But I think he's gotten a little undersold in terms of mobility. But uh, it, a lot of the same things that kind of have been said about, or were said about like Daniel Jones coming out of Duke, I think you can say about Tanner McKee in that, man, he like will not have to learn anything from a like fundamentals. How do you operate an offense perspective? Where it's like, oh, you always used to hear about a lot more. Where it's like, oh, he took all his snaps from shotgun, and now he has to learn our center. So like immediately, it's just like he's just in an NFL offense, and all he has to do is learn the NFL offense. There's no other small transitional stuff that he has to change. And then he's comfortable playing behind what is, more than NFL pressure already. Like
Yeah.
all of his stats, all of his production was with a supporting cast or help around him. That's worse than what it's going to look like at the NFL. That was Daniel Jones at Duke, where it's like day one, his job will be easier. Like everyone says it's harder, the transition. Well, at the quarterback position, it's a little different because if no one's open, no one's open. I don't care
Yeah.
if you're playing against high schoolers. Like you can't force balls into non-existent windows, even if it's Abilene Christian out there that you're playing against.
Right.
So that was what I took away from watching McKee's tape. I'm like, he might have an easier go of it at the next level. And then under all that pressure with little help, like he didn't turn the ball over. His decision making was good. Now he has, you know, average arm by NFL standards, and there were some plays that he probably wants back in terms of just like where he went with the football. I think he can get a little locked in and decide pre-snap a little too much, but I don't think he puts the ball in harm's way. And those are two really good traits to have when projecting the next level: is not turning the ball over and being able to operate sort of the technical aspects of the quarterback position.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, there's like flashes of Rivers in there sometimes. I feel like just the way he kind of lets the ball out of his hand and the size. I feel like he needs to like get a little more comfortable like testing tight man coverage at times, because he will need to do that at the next level. But
Mm-hmm.
that's all mental. And I think what you said about like things getting easier, that's like the biggest selling point for Will Levis as well, where
Yes.
like he's not, the other three guys are going to get to the NFL level, and there's going to be this holy shit like overwhelming aspect of it. Will Levis is gonna be like, I've been doing this all year. Like this is easy
Yes.
compared to what I was doing.
Yeah.
So
Well, Stroud especially. Stroud's
yeah,
the one where it's like that. That's the worrisome thing about Stroud is that the NFL has kind of been fooled before by QBs who had just layups at their disposal when you don't have to really play quarterback, when it's on easy mode, when it's like, oh, first read is open, like
yep.
it's somewhat easier to be accurate and like be productive when that's always the case. It's a lot more difficult when that's not the case.
It's literally just adjusting the sliders in Madden. It's like,
Kind of, yeah.
yeah.
It's a good point.
All right, so I wanted to talk about some of the more polarizing non-quarterbacks in this draft. I just threw this list together of just some guys that I've seen, varying opinions on. The first guy, we had a little bit of discussion about Miles Murphy. So what do you kind of got on Murphy right now?
I I thought I was going to be lower on Miles Murphy than a lot of people, having him just like, I think he's like 21 on the PFF draft board, but a lot of people are souring on him. To me, he's in the mold of, I mean, to a degree, Trayvon Walker last year,
Hmm.
but Walker was, freakier athlete. Obviously, like an all-timer athlete. He's a tier below that athletically, but still in that like high end, in the Rashawn Gary aspect, where it's like the it's truly all there. The explosiveness at his size with his length is a combination that as we've seen with Rashawn Gary, you need like one true pass rushing move to be productive. Like that's Rashawn Gary has a long arm, and then he can kind of counter off it, and that's Rashawn Gary. And
Hmm.
he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL because he's 6'5", 275, and runs like a 4.5.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't take that much when you're that high end athlete. But now he doesn't have that yet either. So
Yeah.
I just think that there's a path for him blossoming in the NFL. Like there's a lot there to work with. And if I go back and look at pretty much everyone else along that Clemson defensive line, is kind of the other thing. And I'm like, did Brian Brzee get much better over the course of his career? KJ Henry, it took 5 years as a 5-star recruit to ever even make an impact on the football field. Why is no one there after they're all top recruits? No one improving. At some point, maybe it's not those guys. Maybe it was the coaching there. Maybe there is still some developmental potential that just the Clemson coaching staff left on the bone.
Yeah. That's a great point. And his 2021 tape was much better for sure. And I hadn't even really watched any of it, or wasn't aware that it was
Mm-hmm.
so much better when I kind of formed my initial opinions on him. And then after I saw it, I was like, all right, I could see him as like a back end round one guy for those reasons.
He looked checked out more this year. Just like if he didn't get home, he was fine with it, and then he kind of just moved on. Like he wasn't fighting his ass off to try to get to quarterbacks. He just kind of like was going through the motions a lot, it seemed like.
Yeah. What about Luke Musgrave? What did you kind of, go take the floor on him.
I like Luke Musgrave, man. I get that the hands are suspect. I get that, but it's a real small sample size, like 56, I think, career catchable passes even. So like hard to really deduce hands on that. But I don't think he's ever going to be a true reliable hands guy. But man, his top speed at that size and just how solidly he's built is unique to me, because he doesn't lose speed when guys are hip to hip with him. Is one of the biggest things. A lot of receivers, tight ends also, it's like they play as fast as the guy that has their hands on him. With
Mm-hmm.
Musgrave, it was like hands on him, You can get him away, and then he'd stride away. At the Senior Bowl, you saw in the one-on-ones, like he has legitimate vertical threat, which is, you can count on one hand, maybe two, the amount of tight ends at the NFL level that you're worried about getting deep. And so I just think it's intriguing. Like if I'm prioritizing skill sets at the tight end, what would I want the most in today's NFL? That's one. That's number one, in my opinion, is the ability to be a vertical threat in an offense, because it just changes the calculus. You can be run heavy. You can be this two tight end team and still create explosive plays off of it. So, but that's it. Like that's the one selling point with Musgrave. Everything else, I'm like, I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I don't know,
Did
Jim.
you like
But
his run blocking?
no, I think he has the frame. I think he has the play strength. I don't think he's there yet as a run
Yeah.
blocker, though.
Okay. Yeah, I like what you said about kind of continuing to accelerate through contact, because that's like you look at the athletes on paper, like him and like Zach Kuntz, for example. It's like very
Mhm.
kind of similar, like frame and speed and stuff. But that is one thing with Kuntz is like he has to learn to play through that contact. And unfortunately, I didn't get any all 22 on Oregon State this year, so I was just going off the broadcast footage on him. So anytime he went like past 10 yards, I'm like, I have no idea what the fuck is going on down there. So that's good to hear.
Well, he was running past defensive backs. It's like he legitimately was taking safeties and like striding away from them. So there is something there in terms of his actual speed.
Nice. What about Emmanuel Forbes? And you can keep this one shorter in terms of like, is the size too big of an issue for you?
I think in this corner class, it is too big of an issue for me. That's so skinny, and especially given how he played, like so much off coverage. And again, that's the way the NFL's going. So it's not a huge deal, but I just think you have a lot of debates in the top of this corner class because there are so many guys that a lot of the debates I'm going to side elsewhere, even if I like in a vacuum think he's an awesome talent, and think he's probably still a top 50 pick. I just think there's probably like five or so corners that I'm taking ahead of him because of that.
Yeah. What about Rashee Rice? I've
Rashee Rice is
I've gone from like a 6th round grade on him up to like 3rd to a 4th.
okay.
I'm rising on him a little bit lately.
He, I worry about his consistency. And now wide receiver is not necessarily a position that like needs high end consistency. I think that's an offensive line trait. That's a corner trait. Those two positions, if you're not consistent, I don't want you. I don't even, not even getting off the bus. Wide receiver is one you can get away with, but man, just some of his routes, the effort, the sort of attention to detail is not there. But then you see him sometimes in like the drive phase of a route, like put his head down, and all of a sudden he's like shot out of a cannon,
Mm-hmm.
and stacks a guy with relative ease. And so I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? He feels a lot like the sort of wide receivers that, if you're going relating back to the Packers, that they've coveted over the years, where it's like size box, height box, size box, and then has just a little one gear that you get off the, whether it's off the line of scrimmage, that just gear of explosiveness, that one cut that he can really get out of and start to stride away. And maybe doesn't have top end speed, but has that to his game. So I think that's a good thing, obviously, the NFL. Like I think he's going to play a role, but I just don't think he ends up blossoming into something special at the next level when you're just that inconsistent.
Yeah. Well, and don't forget the Packers' #1 box, and that's run blocking, and he checks that as
Sorry,
well.
yeah, I'm just trying to keep up with their new scouting methods that they're employing now, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wish it was like 3 inches taller, Rashee Rice. I was just
Yeah.
watching the Maryland game, and there's 2 plays in that game. One was a little bit of a high throw over the middle. It's like the first play of that game, and it's like, if he was 6'3" with better reach, like he probably catches that. And then there was another like a sideline catch attempt, which is really good, like working back the sidelines and stuff. But again, like just out of reach. So it's like if you're gonna be a little bit more of a contested catch, like that kind of winner, it's kind of like in Keel Harry was like, man, you're just not. I need you to be T. Higgins, and you're not.
Yeah, he just, yeah, you would want that guy in that mold exactly, to have more of like a 6'8", 6'10", that sort of wingspan. And what is he, like 6'5"? Like that, he just is
Yeah.
not there. Not there.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So our last thing here, I wanted to have a little fun and do like not a mock draft because I'm a little tired of mock drafts, but like a draft of our own where we're drafting 4 my guys and then we're going to do 2 not my guys. So,
Okay.
um, yeah. Do you want the first pick or do you want the snake turn?
I'll snake it.
Okay.
I'll let you break it off.
All right. My number one my guy is going to be Deontay Banks, the corner out of Maryland. And I guess I kind of got lucky here because it just kind of depends when you watched Deontay Banks and you fell in love with him. And for whatever reason, he was like one of the first 10 players I watched. And I think I actually told you in Vegas, I was like, the one guy I've watched so far that I really like was Deontay Banks. And then just
Mhm.
gradually everybody's like, yeah, this dude's freaking amazing. And it's just, there's a few things I like about him. Maybe the biggest thing I like about him is that Maryland ran every coverage in the book. He was running press man, press bail, cover 2, quarters, like, quarter, half. They did all of
Mhm.
it. And he looked super comfortable in both phases, whether it was man or zone. He's out there communicating coverages. He just like keeps that perfect spacing in cover 2. And just like, I just think he's a really smart player. And then you put the athleticism on top of that. And it's just like, I don't see how he fails at the next level. Literally the only thing with him is he doesn't know how to get his head around when he's in phase. And that's a big deal. Hopefully that's coachable, but like he gets a little grabby when the ball's in the air. He doesn't have the ball skills side of things. So like maybe that holds him back from being like an elite guy, but I just think you take him in the top 20, you plug him right into any system, and he's going to be at least a really good number 2.
We're in agreement there. He's 16th on the PFF board, CB3. I think he's. I have him over Joey Porter. I think he's a higher floor, more versatile player
Yeah.
than Joey Porter. So,
Yeah. That's like exactly where I'll have him as well.
all right, my first pick is who do I want to draft first of these guys? I'll go Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh
All
first.
right.
I have ever since I flipped on his tape, I was way back. I think his redshirt freshman year, I was like, oh, this guy is like
Wow.
something. Because back then he looked like tiny. Back then he was like 270, and I was like, whoa, like who is this guy? And this past year, it was just another level, right? He is on in terms of his quickness. Well, obviously his testing came in the best all time for a defensive tackle, just in terms of speed, explosiveness, change of direction ability on the football field. No one can touch this guy, literally and figuratively. So I think that there are obvious concerns when you're 6'1", 282 pounds with under 31-inch arms trying to play a big man's position like DT. But I think even if you wanted to just play him as an edge, this guy would get home. This guy would get to the quarterback. He has unique physical gifts that wherever you want to line him up, I think he's going to be productive. So he's my one. I'm trying to think who I want to use my 2 on to try to keep him away from you. I'll go this guy, which I thought I'd have more people be on my side with, especially after the Senior Bowl. But Tank Dell he's not high on a lot of boards, and I think he's like the perfect slot receiver in that mold of like if you want vertical dynamism from the slot. Like I think he has it. Like I think he can get open on his own at will because I haven't seen anyone guard him yet. Like I haven't actually seen whether it's on tape at Houston at the Senior Bowl. No one has been able to guard him. Everyone's just said, "Oh, he's too small, too short." That's the only things I've heard from him. And truthfully, his like wingspan is a lot more palatable than you would think for a 5'8" wide receiver, which is what I worry about because that's catch radius for the most part. You're never really high pointing much, especially in the slot. You just have to go outside your frame, and he has long enough arms to do that. So Tank Dell, I think, is a guy that he's probably limited in the role he's going to play in your offense, but if you have just a defined slot role, I think he's going to be damn good.
Yeah, I like that. And kind of a gradual realization for me over the last few years is like you don't have to be big to beat press coverage. And he is like the definition of that. Like his ability to, and like you said, like I think his arms are long enough that it kind of helps him keep guys off of him. But he's just so freaking good with his feet, and he's so quick that like, yeah, you can't. Even in theory, it's like if you get your hands on him, like yeah, you're gonna take him out of the route, but it's just really freaking hard to get your hands on him. So I think that's a little trick in his bag. And then with Cansey, I just want to say like his arm strength was so much better than I thought. Like the way he just takes control of the guy in front of him was really impressive to me. For So now I have 2 picks in a row, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think I can save my number 2 guy for later.
I don't think I'm gonna steal him.
I don't think you will. So I'm gonna go back to back. My first pick will be BJ Ojulari out of LSU. Another guy where I think Banks has a higher floor with what I talked about, but just like I just
Mm-hmm.
don't see how he's not a really good functional number 2 edge rusher. He has so many pass rush moves at his disposal. He's got way better power than he probably should at his size. I know, like when I first think about BJ Ojulari, it is all the swim moves and the ghost. Like he has just every. I said when I did my edge rankings, he is just the actual textbook of pass rushing. Like you can flip through his film, and it's like flipping through all the options of how you can win. And he has a pretty good understanding of like when to go to those moves, and that's only going to get better. But he also he wins with power a lot, and that's just to have that to keep tackles honest is going to be so valuable for him. So like he's not the strongest guy, he's not the best athlete in the world, but just like his brother, like they're different players, but I think he's going to plug in right away and be a really good number 2 for 10 years. My
I like Ojulari. I do just have worries about like the pure strength profile that he has
mhm.
right now, where it's like when he moves are insane, like top notch. But when he fires them, is it an offensive tackle in the NFL? Are their hands going to get swatted away? Are they truly going to be impacted by him? Like he can convert speed to power, but not at a super high level for me to worry about. For him to think he can do it against the Trent Williamses of the world at the NFL. So that's my only thing. But he is young, right? I don't think he's even 21 yet. So
Yeah,
that's obviously can't get stronger.
I think that's totally fair. And maybe he is a guy that like if he's going against the perfect tackles in the NFL, he'll have some games where he gets taken out. But then maybe if he goes against a worse guy, he'll just kind of turn it on. So something to keep an eye on for sure. My oh gosh, I guess I don't know why I had my number 2 guy as high because I'm looking down my list and I'm just like, I want all these guys. I'm gonna take Mazzie Smith out of Michigan. Um, I tweeted about this week and I was like, every time I visit a Michigan game for somebody else, he's that guy that I just keep. I'm sure you've had those guys over the years where you just every time you turn on a Michigan game, you're watching someone else. You end up pushing this guy up a few spots every time. And from just a run defense perspective, I love almost everything about him. I think he could anchor a little bit better given his size against doubles and stuff if you want to play him in like bear fronts and stuff, because I think he could get there at the next level. But if he's left one-on-one with a guy, his combination of his quickness and his just raw strength in his arms, he sheds blocks as good as like anybody I can remember over the last few years. So as a 3 technique, I think he's going to be just a dominant run defender. And then as a pass rusher, he's not there yet, but did you notice the same thing with him where they had him playing from like a squatty potty stance half the time? It's
Yeah, I think he can rush the passer.
yeah,
Like I think there's still pass rush productivity in there, and you see it, which is like his upper body when he can control offensive linemen the way he can. That you can impact the pass game at the NFL level.
yeah, yeah. But like they just had him playing like leaning back with like 2 hands on the ground. It's like you can't rush the passer from that stance. So you take those out, like those aren't good looking pass rush reps. But when you look at the chances he had to actually get in a real stance and go one-on-one, like he really took control of his guys. So I'm at the point where I actually think like first round, end of the first round, I'm cool with it. I keep putting him to the Cowboys because that's like the missing piece that they've had.
Yeah,
And even if it's 5 or 10 spots higher, like I think you're gonna be really happy with him.
yeah. Cowboys, Saints, also.
Yeah.
I think I heard those 2 teams pull the trigger at the back first. Makes sense.
All right, you're up.
All right, my next 2. I went 2 small guys first time. I'm going to go 2 bad athletes this time. I
Oh.
usually don't cover bad athletes, but I'm going to go one Dwayne McBride with my very first
Ooh.
pick in this round of it. The running back out of UAB, 5'10", 209. He was insane on tape. I felt similarly watching him to the way I felt about Rashad Penny at San Diego State, where it's just like, I know the competition's not great. I know like that he also has like fumbling issues too. And I know that not necessarily going to look this good in the NFL, but he just finds creases. Like there wasn't great run blocking at UAB, and he averages like 7.4 for his career because he just knows how to find that little hole, get skinny through it, and then he breaks tackles in the open field like nobody's business. No one could bring him down on tape. So I love his contact balance. And so didn't test yet. He's going to be slow. Like he's going to be 4.6 type of slow, but he still created a ton of big plays on
Mm-hmm.
tape to where I think he's going to be a starting running back in the NFL. I think he is and going to go like an above and beyond, like be a value add as a running back. So I like him. The other guy I like is Andre Carter from Army. Two bad
Wow.
athletes, two small school guys. But when I watch Andre Carter, I see unique bend at the position for a guy his size. And I see like untapped developmental from a body perspective. He is 6'6", 256 with, high school level weight room
Mm-hmm.
looking tone on his frame. Like he could not, and at Army, like you can't keep on weight. Couple months every year, you are in grueling conditions that are not conducive to being an explosive athlete. So like there's an excuse for why he runs a 4.93, but it's the 6.973 cone that you really can't coach into guys. You can't coach that flexibility, and especially at that size. So I'm just intrigued by what year 3 could look like for a guy like that. Could he be 270? Could he be, just as athletic, if not more, with 20 pounds of muscle on his frame? I think there's a good argument to say that, he could potentially be just a much different player than what we're seeing right now. So, obviously not super high, like not top 50, but like if I'm drafted somewhere in the third round, middle of the third, I would love to take this guy. And now he's probably going to go in day 3, but I just think that compared to like the edges you're drafting at that range in time, he offers a lot more.
Yeah, I very much agree there. The intrigue is just so fascinating because he's had to learn how to win with that weird frame. And it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
happens when he throws on a little bit of functional play strength, and does it kind of create this like super skill set? It's very interesting. And I totally agree about McBride as well. He just like the way he sets up angles too. Like he almost like he knows he's not fast, but he just like can see guys coming from like 20 yards away, and he'll just like kind of draw them in and create a bad angle. And it's like that guy's clearly played a lot of Madden, because that's what you do in Madden to create
Yeah.
explosive runs. But it works in real football too. But you don't always see that from back. So he just gets the position. All right, I guess I got to take one more dude. I'll take Zach Kuntz. I'll do it.
Okay.
Out of Old Dominion.
Why not?
I expected to see garbage tape, like a dude at Old Dominion that just can't run routes, can't get any leverage as a blocker, horrible hands, like didn't produce. I just expected with that athletic profile, a guy that's on nobody's radar to just be like, who was it? Zach Davidson, or who was the guy the Giants took? Like,
Oh, Shane Zimenez?
no,
Or wait. Oh.
no, tight end.
Oh, tight end.
I
Okay.
think it was Zach
Oh, no.
Davidson. Or like
Um,
the other guy the Rams took, the
oh,
out of
yeah. The
UCF.
UCF guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like both those guys was like,
Just
no,
like,
their tape is absolute ass. Zach
mm-hmm.
Kuntz, I was like, okay, there's something there. Like I actually felt like he was one of the better route runners out of the tight ends in this class, just the foot speed and the way he kind of set guys up at his breaks. I thought his run blocking was like okay, given to like his level of competition. The effort was very much there. And like ball skills were fine. Like he doesn't have a bunch of drops. Thing that like really sells me on him though is his background. Goes to Penn State, is like your classic, you're too tall to play receiver, so we're going to convert you to tight end, but you got to gain weight. And then
Mm-hmm.
he's sitting there behind Pat Fryermuth and the other guy in this class, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to go to Old Dominion because I can't get on the field. And did they have a coaching change, by the way? Do you know? In that, like, it would have been
I'm not
20.
sure.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he transfers because he couldn't get on the field, but I think that's acceptable, like given that you have guys in front of you, and he was kind of this developmental guy that was going to take a few years to come into that body anyway. Gets up to 245 in his first year at Old Dominion. This is year 4 for him. And it took like 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden he's just balling out. He's getting like 10 targets every week. He ended up with like 700 yards, 5 touchdowns. And then coming into the 5th year, he gets all the way up to 255. So the weight's still coming for him. He's still kind of coming into that 6'7" frame. Productive first 4 weeks, had a really good game against Virginia. So like he's played against the level of competition, and then he goes down for the year. And it's just like, what happened if he finished the year, showed another year of like full seasons tape? And with that athletic profile, like, have you seen his testing numbers?
Oh, insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just like he's like Anthony Richardson from a tight end athletic testing perspective. There's not a single box where it's like not one of the best that you could possibly look
Yeah.
for, from agility to speed. And like he even had the most bench reps. Not that that's, everything about a guy's play strength, but um, for a guy that's not getting any talk, I would take him at the back end of the 3rd round. Like once those like day one starters kind of come off the board, like, and you're talking about guys you need to develop, 100% taking this guy. Like if the league lets the Chiefs get him and he can sit behind Travis Kelce for a couple of years, it could be pretty wild.
And tight end's a position that's what you bet on. That's why, like the UCF, gosh, Jacob Harris is that
Yeah.
his name? I think
Yeah.
something like that. That's why those guys get drafted, is because you don't need, and you need the fluidity and you need the athleticism, and then the rest can kind of be coached to a degree. I'd be curious to see how much more weight he can
Mm-hmm.
gain, right? Because with his athletic profile at 6'7", is like 270 off limits for him. 15 more pounds. I don't think that's crazy, and he'd still be a high end athlete, even if some of that's a little bit of bad weight. And then think about trying to guard a 6'7", 270-pound guy who runs probably like his 4.6 at that time. Whew,
Yeah.
that's not easy. Like that won't be easy. So I do think that you're projecting out after you get past probably the top group of like 6 or 7 in this class. I'm taking him over guys probably like, I'd rather have him than like a Davis Allen from
Mm-hmm.
Clemson in the 3rd round, who is probably going to be solid, but it's probably never going to reach
Yeah.
high end. Whereas Kuntz, you can get high
Mm-hmm.
end up. All right, last
Yep.
one. Is this it? Pick 5. We'll have to go. Like I said, Tanner McKee is probably one of my guys. Quentin Johnston's probably one of my guys, but I'll go a different one that we haven't talked about. And it's Dian Henley, the Washington State linebacker. To me, he's the best linebacker in this class. I think he's going to be special at the next level. I think his sort of feel for zone coverage is some of the best I've seen in the past couple seasons. And I think from a traits perspective, it truly is all there to be like a legit coverage playmaker around the line of scrimmage, down the football field, wherever you really want him to go. I'm just really intrigued by how he plays the game already and how good he is as a tackler too. For guys been playing linebacker for 3 years, right? Is 3 years a linebacker after playing quarterback and wide receiver in high school and in college. So I think there's just some unique traits that he possesses that, truthfully, he may end up like a top. He's 38th on the PFF draft board right now. May even end up higher.
All right. Yeah, I actually have not watched him yet. I'm very excited to, because I think this linebacker class is garbage. So to have one guy
It
that you can get
is
excited about is pretty fun. And I like Campbell, but he's got a ceiling. Cool. All right, you have time to do a couple of not my guys?
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
do it.
I'll give you the first pick this time.
This one, I don't have to worry about you picking it, but Darnell Washington, I think he's just capped. And people see this insane frame and this 40-yard dash that, like, at his size, doesn't really make sense. What was it, 4.65 or something like that, 270? And they're like, oh my gosh. It's just unique. But if you watch him try to run a route to try to beat a defender, it looks like me out there trying to, like, there's no separation ability on his tape. And now he does other things that obviously that you're drafting him for and where he will get drafted for, which is, the run blocking aspect, the catch radius aspect. Even if like he's a ground player, he does not get up off the ground and go hauling balls outside his frame much. He's really
Worst vertical
not that kind of guy.
jump in the class
Yeah,
for tight ends.
he really is just like a shuffler, and you see it even in his running style. He doesn't really elevate off the ground much, but there's just, what is he ever going to go for 800 yards as a receiver? I doubt it. And at that point, is the run blocking worth that much to pass up other positions? I don't think it is. Truthfully, if you draft him in the first round, it would only be I would only draft him there. Or the only circumstances I would accept for someone taking him is them saying he agreed to play offensive tackle for us, because I think that's a
Hmm.
unique profile to try to put 30 more pounds on and try to block NFL edge rushers. But it's not one that I want trying to get open at tight end.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I know I talked about him for the Packers earlier. It's part of that is just because my expectations are so low for who they're going to take that he's a guy that's like, well, at least they took a guy that was a top 50 player for me. But I when I just did my top tight end video yesterday, I was kind of echoing some of those points where it's like he doesn't separate. I was like, there's a chance he's just Virgil Green, and that's not worth a first round
Mm-hmm.
pick. So I do agree with some of that. But I'm going to go with Keon White for my first pick out of Georgia Tech. And coming into the Senior Bowl, heard him getting some hype. Like, look out for this guy. He's a freak. He's going to kick ass. And I don't know. Maybe you saw something different. I didn't see anything from him at the Senior Bowl. Like, literally, maybe one rep was like, okay, I can see some of the traits in that rep. But for the most part, it's just like, I don't think he's as good off the ball as he could be. I don't think he has any pass rush moves. The two biggest things that I can't stand with him. Number one, I don't think his arms are very strong. I think he gets all of his power in his lower half. So that's great. It's good to have power in your lower half. But if you're going to be what he's going to have to be is that Rashawn Gary kind of like, power rush profile. I think you need the both package. You need to be able to control your guy with your arms. I don't think he does that very well. I think that hurts him in the run game a little bit, in terms of like, I don't think he's a great strong side run defender. And then the other thing is like, I think he's really bad with his eyes in run defense. I felt like guys were just running right past him. He wasn't shedding or anything. So I don't think he's got a high floor as a run defender like Trayvon Walker had last year. And I don't know, like there's technically a ceiling there. And I know people are souring on him a little bit now where it's, you don't really see him in the first round anymore, but I've got a late third, early fourth round grade on him. I just don't get it with him.
Yeah, we're in the same boat there. If I didn't know, if I hadn't read Bruce Feldman's freaks list or heard it talked up, you don't see it on tape. You don't see explosiveness off the line. You don't see those things on tape, snap to snap, and that's always like a red flag to me. It's like, why don't you? So that's we're in the same boat. I'll stay on the edge, and there's another guy
Hold on.
who
I
freakish.
get my next
Oh,
pick.
you got.
Although,
Oh, your snake. My bad. Don't
uh,
steal my gun.
I do you know why Keon White didn't test though? Is he hurt or did he choose not to?
Didn't he do something at the combine, or am I crazy? I know he
I don't
didn't
think
do a
I
full
have.
testing, but
Let's see.
yeah, he did the vert and the
Yeah.
broad, 34-inch vert, 9.9 broad,
So
and he did a 4.79 S pro day.
4.79 at his pro day. I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
lower him. I just don't get it, dude. I do like I
yeah, I
day
agree.
3 guy at this point because that's supposed to be his
Mm-hmm.
thing is speed. He's supposed to run like a 4.5. All right. All right. Another guy that's this theoretical athlete that I do like him more than Keon White, but Trenton Simpson out of Clemson. I just see him as your kind of like pick your poison day 2 athlete, nothing more, nothing less. Not even like I got him late third round. Like I think he would have been LB7 for me in last year's draft. Just don't see the instincts. I don't think he really knows what he's looking at in zone. Like he can go man to man for sure. Honestly, might be better to like put on 15 pounds and play edge for him because his pass rushing profile is the best thing about him, in my opinion. Yes, he could be a guy that turns into a guy in like 3 or 4 years, but I also have this like long standing take about drafting linebackers high. And he's the prototype guy. Like, do not take him in the top 50 when there are going to be guys like the Diane Henleys of the world, maybe, or even worse prospects available in the third and fourth round.
Yeah, this linebacker class, there's so few guys that I would really want where they're probably going to get drafted. I think Henley is one. I don't even know if I'd say Jack Campbell is two, but depending on where he goes, I don't really have a great handle on where he's going to come off the board. I do like his tape, think he's solid, but that's after that, maybe Nick Herbig, the Wisconsin linebacker, and that's it. Like everyone else is going to go too high for what I
Yeah.
think about their
And
tape
even
right now.
Herbig's like he's an edge probably or like a hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he might be. Yeah.
All right.
All right, last one. I am going to go Auburn's Derek Hall,
Really?
staying on the
Okay.
edge. I I just think he's stiff. I know he's explosive and looks like a Greek god. I mean, the guy is diced up for 255 pounds, 4.5, 540. Like should all be there, right? Like it should be an elite edge prospect. Well, why isn't
Mm-hmm.
he? You know, why isn't he getting talked about at all like that? And that's after 4 years at Auburn. I just think again, I don't think he's going to bend the edge well at all. I think he's not a high side rusher. His best reps are inside moves. And I don't think he's a consistent bull rusher. And I'm not sure he like plays low enough to consistently bull rush. On tape against the run, he's not a hard edge setter by any means. I think he may even struggle in that regard. So, yeah, I think he's much closer to a day 3 than a top
Uh-huh.
50
All
right
right.
now. And he's probably going to go top
Mhm.
50.
Yeah. I definitely like Hall a little more than that. As like a day 2 guy, but interesting. I'd agree with the stiffness, so I can see where you're seeing a lot of that stuff. All right, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on. Got a little bit longer than I told you, so thanks for the extra time. But
Problem?
I know you're working on the draft guide. That thing is a piece of work. If you guys have not checked it out, the power of a good scout like Mike, and then PFF Ultimate behind it, it's like that thing is about as good as it gets as far as draft content. So I'll plug that for you. Is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, that's about it. I was talking to you before, maybe starting a YouTube channel here soon. We shall see. Don't know what I'm going to post. Don't even know what it's going to be called. But maybe be on the lookout for that. Maybe I'll tweet about it if
All
I do.
right, awesome. Excited for that. Thanks for coming on, Mike. Hope you guys all enjoyed the interview, and we'll see you guys later. Peace out.